Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday, August the 30th, and welcome to our commentary. I don't know about you, but I remember when I was growing up a few years ago, our family went to Wisconsin when we first came to the United States from Cuba. And I remember back in the mid to late 60s when we used to go back to school on the day after Labor Day. It was like the Tuesday after Labor Day that we would go back to school. And here, of course, in Texas, the kids have been in school for 10 days. So I don't know what's better. I don't know what's better, the way we used to do it or the way they do it here. And I'm not sure if they always did it this way in Texas, meaning that they went to school in the middle of August. I tell you one thing, when my sons were going to school here locally, uh, it was pretty warm out in the middle of August. I mean, when they were working out for football practice, it was hot out there in those fields. And they start playing football pretty much. I think they'll be playing this Friday or maybe the following Friday. But it gets started very early here in Texas. It was started a little bit later when I was living up in the Midwest many years ago. But anyway, this is the last week of August. And come next week, we'll be in September. And what that means, of course, Labor Day, that's usually the unofficial beginning of the campaign, the midterms. So you're going to see the political intensity go up quite a bit, particularly commercials on television and on social media and everything else. So that'll happen after Labor Day. That's when the campaign really gets going. Well, today, Tuesday, we're going to have our weekly chat with my good friend Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda. We'll be recording that in the podcast that will be available later today. You can hear it on my blog, or I put it up on my Facebook page, so you'll be seeing that. And it's always interesting. This week we're going to be talking about the loan cancellation program. The White House cannot explain what this is going to cost. This is amazing. They cannot explain what this is going to cost. I mean, they can talk about the benefits and how it's going to do this and it's going to do that, but they cannot explain how much it's going to cost. And you would think that they would have been better prepared for this. I mean, if you're going to go out in the middle of an inflationary period and you're going to forgive X billions of dollars of loans, you would think that they would have been better prepared for the question that they knew was going to come, and that is, how much is this going to cost? They don't have any idea. They cannot explain it. It's pretty interesting. Another thing that we're going to talk to Bill about is the affidavit. Where exactly is this going, and where is this going to end up? I'm beginning to think more and more that what's going to happen here is that it'll reach a point where the White House will realize that there's no more political benefit to this. And I think what may happen is that they'll just simply say, we got the documents back that we were looking for, and that's the end of the case, and we're just going to move on to something else. Because I think an indictment of President Trump is going to be a really hot potato for this White House to get into or to touch. So that's why I don't think there's going to be an indictment. I have no inside information. It's just my gut feeling. I just don't think there's going to be an indictment. I think what they will do is say, okay, we got our documents back. End of the story. Let's move on. Now, Congress probably does have a responsibility here to go back and maybe check out that law that was signed in 1978. We've been operating under that law since 1978, and it's never really been tested. Because honestly, the arrangement always gave the outgoing president the benefit of the doubt with respect to the documents. So the outgoing president always had the last word, if you will, on the documents. If there was any difference, it was settled in private or whatever. But the outgoing president always had the benefit of the doubt, or certainly had a lot of flexibility to take documents, and that's what maybe Congress needs to do and clarify all of that. Simply say, look, okay, this is the way it's going to be, and this is the way we're going to do it from now on, and let's move on. I don't think it would be a very good idea for this White House to indict President Trump. I think it would be a political nightmare for the country if that were to to happen. The cooler heads will prevail in this White House, and they will simply get whatever document they think they need and move on to the next issue. One of the stories that we're going to be talking extensively with Bill Katz today is this whole question of Facebook and the FBI. Mark Zuckerberg, who's the CEO of Facebook, admitted on a radio interview that the FBI went to see him during the 2020 campaign. And they went to see him with respect to, basically, they were telling him, don't run that Hunter Biden story because we think it could be Russian disinformation. Now, I have no idea how the FBI knew that. And secondly, I have no idea why the FBI would do that. I mean, that's not something the FBI should be doing. That's something that maybe the Attorney General should be doing, or somebody from the National Intelligence, the CIA, or whatever. That's where it should come from, not the FBI. So there are some Republican senators who are calling for hearings to invite Mark Zucker in to say, hey, what happened? What did they tell you, and who told you? And what was the source of all of this? I think we need to know this. I think we need to know this because we already know that there is polling data that says anywhere from 8 to 10% of the vote would have changed in 2020 if the public had known about the Hunter Biden story. Now, that 8 to 10% could have changed the election result because remember, it was a very close election. I mean, the Electoral College, the states that decided the Electoral College were decided by 50 or 60,000 votes. So that's not a lot of votes. And if you're talking about 8 to 10% out of 160 million people, well, the possibility is that the election could have gone the other way. So, people talk and say there's no evidence of fraud. Well, no, we don't have any evidence that they went down to the cemetery and they picked up a few votes. Yeah, we don't have that kind of evidence. But we do have here with the admission of the CEO of Facebook that they were told to do something during the campaign and keep certain information from going public. Let me say hello to my good friend checking in. So, again, people talk about the 2020 election. I don't want to relitigate the 2020 election, but I do want to know what the heck happened. I do want to know what the heck happened. And if the FBI was talking to Facebook about that story, that's not really the role of the FBI in my opinion. So we need to know more about that because my gosh, Trump could have won this election if that story had actually been covered. Trump would have won the election. I'm pretty convinced of that. Now, he may have won the election anyway, okay? But again, we don't have the official data for that. But my goodness, this story should be looked at a lot more. Couple of things as we say goodbye today. Again, don't forget to check out my podcast with my friend Bill Katz later on. We're going to get into all of this with Bill, but just a couple of issues here, or a couple of stories as we leave you today. We remember today two great baseball players. Ted Williams was born on this day in 1918. He passed away in 2002. Ted Williams, if you put 100 experts, baseball experts in a room, and you said, who was the greatest hitter of all time? I'm going to guess that 70% would say Ted Williams, because he is considered to be, in so many ways, the most perfect hitter of all time. He's well known, of course. He's the last major leaguer to hit 400. Then 15 years later, he hit 388. So, as he was getting older, he was still a pretty good hitter. But a lot about Ted Williams is very interesting. A lot of people, if you read his biography, I would recommend that you do. He was not a very popular. He was not a very popular player with the fans nor with the media. He was not a popular player, but he was a very effective player. And so during World War II, for example, he served in World War II as a Marine pilot, and then he went back during the Korean War and he flew missions again with the Marines. So he probably lost about 4 to 5 years of his career to military service, serving in 2 different wars, in two different wars, World War II and Korea. So the guy had an amazing life. And I guess the greatest thing too about Ted Williams is on the last day of the 1941 season, he was hitting .3996, which means it would have been rounded up to 400. He didn't even have to play that day. But the manager said, Ted, you don't have to play. You've already hit 400. And he said, no, I want to make sure it's really, because I don't want people saying that I hit .3996. So he went out, he played a doubleheader. He got 6 hits in that doubleheader. And that's how he ended up hitting .406 for the regular season. So Ted Williams was not just a great hitter, but he was a man who really focused on what he was doing. And we also remember today Casey Stengel, the great manager of the New York Yankees. He won 10 pennants with the Yankees and 10 American League pennants and 7 World Series. And if you grew up in the 1950s or early 60s, Casey Stengel was one of the great personalities of the game. He said a lot of things, a lot of quotes. If you ever read anything about his life, he had more quotes than you could imagine. Just a great personality, Casey Stengel. So again, check out my good friend Bill Katz this afternoon on when we do the podcast, the Weekend Review. And yes, one of my friends who's sending me something in is saying that Texas had standing with that but the Supreme Court didn't check it out. He's exactly right. I was disappointed also that the Supreme Court did not check that effort from Texas and other states to at least look into the 2020 election. I just want to say one thing about the 2020 election, and that is that at this point of the game, we're better focusing on 2022 and the economy, because that's how we're going to win 2022. But after the Republicans take over the House, and I think the Senate as well, a lot of things about 2020 have to be looked at. And I think with majorities, we will be able to do that. Thank you for watching. Have a wonderful day. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Texas, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye, everybody.